Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool review for you from the brand Monta. Of course, a little bit about the brand. They were founded back in 2015. They're Swiss-made, and they're basically a micro-brand startup with their eye on that entry-level luxury market. And they've been doing a pretty good job about going after that space, and they've pretty much garnered, obviously a lot of positivity. And I think just not only their models, but as a brand, Monta's been making a lot of the right moves to really complete the space that they're in and that they're going for, and be super competitive against the mainstream, while at the same time really differentiating themselves from some of their closer contemporaries in the micro brand and independent watchmaking world. So a little bit about this type of watch is, of course, an everyday watch, and also a traveler's watch. Now, some key common characteristics and design language for an everyday watch: you're going to want that versatile blend of sporty and dressy attributes. But for a traveler's watch, of course, you're going to want that GMT/world timer functionality, so you can track multiple time zones with relative ease. Now, this particular model is called the Atlas, of course, pretty aptly named. Having the world on your shoulders, and I think this is really nice because it actually puts the time zones at your fingertips. So this is, of course, in the Monta Blue, which is this really cool deep glossy blue, which I think is really tough to photograph. So I'm hoping you'll be able to really see what this dial setup looks like in the video. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this piece in hand for a closer look. Okay. So as you can see, absolutely gorgeous piece here. This dial is just hypnotic. It just, for being so clean and stark, there's not any particular texturing or anything that's going on there, but what you do get is a whole lot of depth, and just really just beautiful, deep, true blue. You're not going to get, any hints of purple or anything like that in there. Just really top notch. I love the look. Now, the retail price on these is $17.95, or you can get them for $16.15 now on pre-order. So of course this hasn't been released yet, and this is actually a pre-production prototype. But of course, this is pretty far along as far as comparable to the production units. They're pretty much going to be the same, just they're going to be new and aren't going to have a couple of the wear marks that you're going to see here on this kind of press loaner model. Now, if you're looking at this and thinking it looks a bit familiar, you saw the specs in the beginning of the video, you think those sound a little familiar with the 38.5 millimeter diameter, the 10.2 millimeter height. Everything from the bracelet to the general case shape and whatnot, you're probably thinking this looks a lot like another watch we've reviewed on this channel, which is the Monta Triumph, and it's actually one of my favorite watches in my collection. I absolutely love the Triumph, which is meant to be more of a field watch. So there are going to be some differences here. As you can see, we have the fully applied indices, which really set off that dial there, and the indexes are a bit different, and then of course everything plays off of that extra hand there, so you can actually get multiple time zones, and you do have the 24-hour scale on that chaptering. But they are pretty similar. They're not exactly the same though. There are some key differences. The bracelets are pretty much the same, although this is the original Gen 1 bracelet clasp, and then here you have the Gen 2, which is flush, versus having the kind of 3D little emblem sticking out. But the cases are actually different, and the bezels are actually quite different. If you take a look here, you'll actually notice that the bezel is a bit thicker on the Atlas. As you can see, there's just a hair step higher, and the case shape is actually different. As you can see, a little bit more of a simple mid case here with a really nice kind of sweep to a very soft angle here that will ride along the wrist. Well, here you have a little bit more of a complex shape where it actually goes up, then comes back down, then sweeps back up. So side by side. Of course, if you weren't looking for the differences, you probably wouldn't notice them. But I think it's actually really cool that they didn't just, this isn't just a cut and paste job here. They definitely put in more work and more design effort into making a different watch. Although, yes, it's going to have a very similar profile and aesthetic. Same can kind of be said for the other watches in their lines, as far as, it has a common design language, and it's a good design language. So of course you'd want that to be quite readable across their entire ranges. So as you can see, they're slightly different shape, but it basically takes a really fun base and kind of builds on top of it. And I gotta say, I'm very, very impressed. And as much as I love this piece, of course it is one of my favorites and does find its way to my wrist quite often, so much to the point to where I have to kind of try to mix it up so I can actually get some different shots on Instagram, and they're not all of just me wearing the Monta Triumph everywhere. I have to make a conscious effort not to wear this watch, because that's just how versatile it is. Now, of course, now back to the Atlas. It does have all those same kind of great lines, with a couple of tweaks, a little bit more complex. It does have the flat sapphire crystal with the inner AR coating, which works absolutely magnificently, as you can see, even in these hot studio lights where you can make it super reflective. You can actually tell here now just how deep that dial is, and it just really does a great job managing those reflections, which is really great. Now, of course, it does have that beautiful, directional brushing there all around that fixed bezel. You do get this nice high polished kind of bevel edge there, which does tie into the high contrast bevels that go all across the case on the inner and the outer part of the lugs, and then all the way down, of course, the gorgeous fully articulated bracelet. The crown is signed with this really great Monta logo. Just really, again, everything you love from the Triumph, with even a little bit extra there to love. This is powered by the Sellita SW330, so instead of the 300, the 330, and basically that just denotes the fact that it has the GMT functionality. As you can see, this is a smoothed out case back. It doesn't have any type of etching there with any other information, because it's pre-production, so this is going to stay clean and sterile there. But you get a nice look at the movement, the clasp mechanism. Of course, this isn't the quick adjust clasp that is available on the Ocean King. That is kind of exclusive to that particular model, but this is a really great clasp, and it's something that, of course, I still even enjoy on my Triumph. And basically it does have those micro adjusts. Everything's beautifully done here. It does taper down from 20 down to 16. Then you have the 18mm clasp. So really, really nice there. And just really gorgeous, and definitely goes into some of those very classic kind of Rolex Oyster dimensions there as far as the taper and the execution. So really beautifully done. And of course, all of this is, Monta in-house. There's nothing that's off the shelf that they purchased somewhere else. They do have that puck locking system there. So really nice, solid lock, super smooth, and just really, really impressive from a design and from a fit and finish standpoint. With these gloves, it's a little bit tougher, of course, for me to pop everything open and closed, but once you'll see me with the gloves off and I get this on wrist, it'll be a little bit easier. So really great. So of course, a little bit about the SW330. It does have, of course, a 4 Hertz sweep, which is 8 ticks per second. It has a 42-hour power reserve, and it's regulated in-house to be plus or minus 5 seconds a day, which is really nice. The case back is, of course, a display case back, like you noticed, and normally it would be. It would actually have some engraving there with the information. Not in this case because, pre-production, but you can get a look at that. It's definitely something really nice and clean to look at and to behold. So really fan of that execution. And of course, it does still maintain that 150 meters water resistance, or up to 500 feet, which is pretty outstanding, and really more than you'll ever need. So that's what really makes this thing just truly capable. You can have this for water sports, you can have it in the sky, you can have it down on the ground. So I mean, you can really, this thing is a triple threat. You can take it anywhere, and it's going to even give you some extra functionality for tracking a second time zone, even if you don't travel. Pretty much, I always set my second time zone to the East Coast, so I'm here in California, and it's always good to know the East Coast time, because if you have customers and clients and whatnot in the East Coast, it's good to know when they're going to be out for the rest of the day. So if you need to get anything approved last minute, that's really how I get it done. And I would imagine it could probably work in reverse if you're in the East Coast and you want to make sure that people are awake on the West Coast before you try to follow up with them on an order or something like that. So that's something that I always find a great use for, apart from the fact that it just looks a little bit cooler and helps fill up the dial by adding an extra hand. Now, the lume on here is, of course, BGW9 Swiss Super Luminova, and because now it has the applied indices, it glows just a touch even nicer than the Triumph does. So really nice from that standpoint. We already covered the bracelet, so let's go ahead and get this piece on wrist. Okay, as you can see, this thing rides absolutely perfectly on the wrist. Get a little bit more of my arm in there, you can get an idea of scale. I do have a 7¼ inch wrist, and this thing wears just beautifully. Of course, it is only 38.5 millimeters in diameter, but it does have such a beautiful shape with those lugs that it does give you a nice amount of wrist presence as well. And although it is very similar to the Triumph, it's going to ride a hair taller because it does have to have a little bit of extra bezel to accommodate for kind of the hand height that is added when you do have that very cool GMT. And of course, if you're wondering why there's a little kink in that particular hand, it's because it's actually pretty smartly engineered to. As you can see, the indices are raised, so for this hand to be able to extend out all the way to the ends there, it basically has to be able to ride above those indices. So the big 12-hour, 3 and 9-hour indices that are sitting there, higher set a bit, it does have to glide above those, and it actually does even glide above that hour hand, further out. So I think that's a really cool design feature, and really unique. Most places answer is to just have a shorter hand and just make the arrow as big as possible, and I think it's really cool and interesting that they did that. With just a little kink there, and it does add, for me, some visual interest and just a little bit even more dimension to it. So really loving this on wrist. What can I say? As you can see, even really rides really perfectly. Beautiful clasp, highly executed, highly designed, and just high pleasure and high praise. So actually, let's move on to some low light transition and lume shots. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, absolutely gorgeous lume. You do get the running seconds hand, where you can see that tip there going around nicely, crosses and sweeps right over that secondary hour hand there for the other time zone. Really beautifully done, and you can see that blue lume is very cool, very blue, and very much BGW9. But what I like to do also is present some low light transitions, just because my studio lights do a great job of simulating direct sunlight. But you know what, you're not always going to be out in the middle of a park when you're wearing a watch. A lot of times you're going to be coming in and out of a vehicle, in and out of a building and whatnot. So it's nice to see kind of the lower light aspects of here, and it does give you a nice idea of what that color palette's going to look like in real time, as well as give you a chance to appreciate the very, very fine finishing on this case and bracelet. As you can see, the way the light comes across the brushing there, extremely uniform. Oh yeah, really nice. Look at that along the links, how uniform the light is just playing on that. And the reason why it's able to do that is because of the level of finish the brushing level, everything just quite gorgeous. Super impressed by that. And there you can see as the camera kind of adjusts, gives you a real punch in the face with that blue as everything kind of levels back out. Now, you know, on the wrist, it's just really perfectly proportioned, super comfortable and balanced wear. There are different model variants. You can get a charcoal gray, which is actually definitely a shade darker than the gray that you'll find on the Triumph. There's also an opaline silver, which is almost like a white dial, really, really cool, high contrast setup. And you can get either on bracelet, of course, or you can get it on rubber or leather options, and then they're all actually included to a really cool premium NATO. Now, comparable models, honestly, when I'm looking at this, it's really hard for me to think of much else that's out there that is doing anything similar to this. I'm sure they're out there, so I'm definitely open to your guys's ideas when it comes to comparables. What do you think stack up well to this piece? I mean, at under $2,000, I mean really under $1,800. Even if you wait and you don't do the pre-order, and you kind of go for the full shebang later on when everything's available and hopefully not sold out yet. Really, what are you going to put this and stack it up against? I'm having trouble thinking. I mean, there's a couple of new models that'll be coming out soon that I think we have yet to kind of see as far as the level of finishing and fit. But I mean, there's tons of course, GMT models out there. Most of them are kind of in dive form. There's very few that are in this really cool kind of everyday space, which I think it's doing really well. And then of course it is extremely sporty with the water resistance and whatnot. So let me know in the comments below what you're thinking as far as comparables. For me, the bottom line is this thing is really just the most finely balanced and executed GMT sports watch under $2,000 and possibly even higher. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the best thing under $4,000. I just don't really venture that high up to look for sports watches. Of course, there's the big brands and the big brand names, and they're out there with their variants. But I think that this thing definitely is punching way above its weight, and it's up there. It's really gorgeous. It has its own design language. It has its own beginnings of pedigree because the Manta brand has been so well received thus far, and I've just been super impressed, and I definitely plan to buy one of these and kind of make it my third Manta apart now from the first one, which I had I bought the Triumph, still have it, and then also I have the Ocean King, which I love. So I think this thing, I could have a 3-watch Manta collection if I wanted to, but you know me, I always gotta have more. But definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like, and if you're not already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.